rattle it off. There's no
All right,
telling.
we are officially on YouTube, and we're going live on Twitch in a moment.
See, I can't. I have nothing else now.
Oh, now you have nothing else. You know what?
I was.
They're tuned in. They're listening.
I dumped out the bucket, and now I have
Wow.
nothing left in the bucket.
Wow.
Whatever.
Mr. Bucket.
For those of you who like this
Mr. Bucket.
pre-show random crap that I do, please at Evan Irwin, or no, not Evan Irwin, at Mr. Orange.
MISTER.
You can find him at Mr. Orange on the tweets.
That's right, on the Twitter twats. So, all right, here we go.
Don't say that last word. It's a family show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Magic Mics. I'm Evan Irwin, and we get started as we do each and every week by saying hello to my two co-hosts, Aaron Campbell.
Merhaba.
Ruben Bressler.
Hello.
How you guys doing?
Doing great.
Okay.
Hopefully, end of show. No,
so that was our show this week.
Turkish follower.
Appreciate you guys hanging out.
Yep.
There was so much going on. It's almost like, you know, it's like sensory overload. There has been so much happening in the past 7 days with Magic the Gathering. It is insane. It is ridiculous. Now, I am happy and glad that we got the 2016 Mikeys out last week. I think that went very well. I'm really happy with how that happened.
Yep.
Apparently, Aaron, you can tell us a little bit about, some people said they liked it, yes?
Yeah, I was at Grand Prix Louisville this past weekend, and I got to meet several listeners, several fans of the show, including one of our biggest patrons, Jay Bryan. It was very nice to meet you. And the one thing I kept hearing over and over again is how much people loved the Mikeys. A lot of rave reviews over it. And specifically, people couldn't believe how quickly we threw that together. People thought that we really, really planned that. And the truth is I think we threw that together, 24 hours before?
I think a lot of people think that we planned this show really far ahead of time.
I would say maybe I gave you guys about 9 or 10 hours. Somewhere in the early afternoon, I was like, hey guys, I want to do this awards thing. And this is silly, but here's some categories. And then we kind of hashed out the rest. And I got a graphic done at 6 o'clock that night so we could broadcast at 11 o'clock, so we threw it together. Next year we'll take some more time on it because, part of it is just I wanted to pilot. Does anybody care? Does anybody like it? Will they enjoy this? I thought it was fun. Everybody else thinks it's fun. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we get started here, Wizards.
Axe to grind.
Dear Wizards, the gears must grind.
You don't have to pass the salt thing up, do you?
No, but let me tell you, Wizards, please don't ever do 1 week of spoilers. That was horrible because, and for a few reasons, not just. First of all, there's the drinking from the fire hose. There's just there's spoiler on spoiler on spoiler on spoiler. No one cares. No one has time to talk about it. Who cares? Spoiler. Everything's spoiler. Okay, there's more spoilers on Twitter. Okay, there's another one on Reddit. Okay, there's another one over here in this weird, the Wizards Play Network stuff, and I mean, just every random thing had a spoiler, and they were trying to give spoilers to smaller outlets, to people who have less of a megaphone than we do, and when the fire hose is on full blast and Joe Podcast is trying to really take advantage of their really cool card that they've been waiting on, everything just gets lost in the middle of it. And now we have bannings. We have bannings that are going to happen the week before the pre-release. That's a big deal. So, Wizards, please, from the bottom of my magic love and heart, don't ever do that again. Give us some time with spoilers. Yes, it's a small set. That's okay. Because it sucks, because what I felt what we were going to be doing this week is we were going to go over the entire Aether Revolt, spoiler. We're going to talk about all the cards we like. It's going to be sweet. And we're still going to do that here in just a few minutes. However, we have to kind of preface it with the ridiculous amount of crap that's happened in the meantime.
Yep.
Bannings. Standard bannings for the first time since Jace and Stoneforge. For God's sake. Now, look, I just wish that had there just been any line on Reflector Mage, just a 10,000 to 1 shot Reflector Mage gets banned, and that one guy puts $5 on it because whatever reason, and just destroys it. Did anyone see these bannings? They banned Emrakul the Promised End from Standard, Smuggler's Copter from Standard, and Reflector Mage from Standard. There's some modern bans. We'll get to those in just a second. I want to talk about Standard. Now, first, Reflector Mage. Reflector Mage? Okay.
Yeah.
So, the best, or if not the best, certainly one of the best Mana War effects of all time. A card that I think we all recognized as pushed for its mana cost at the time it was published, at the time it was printed, and a card that could legitimately keep certain things in or out of the format. It could kind of push some strategies away or help some other strategies. Emrakul, I think, was when there was no graveyard hate in Aether Revolt. That was it. You know what I mean? And Seth, MTG Goldfish, absolutely latched onto it and was like, look, we got no graveyard hate. Like, what's going on with this? We got nothing. They gave us nothing. Not like a virtual Relic of Progenitus, not a Tormod script, not a Withered Wretch.
Even a Cranial Archive. Like, people weren't asking for Rest in Peace. They were like, I'll take Cranial Archive. Like, that's how desperately we need something.
Give me Loaming Shaman.
Give me that black zombie that for one colorless just eats things. Like
the Withered Wretch.
Yeah. So those were things people were clamoring for, and they didn't give it to you. And it's like, well, okay, here's Aetherworks Marvel versus Emrakul. Congratulations, welcome to format. And then they're like, okay, no. First of all, Smuggler's Copter, and we talked about it, has dominated in ways that no card, literally no card I have ever seen has dominated the way Smuggler's Copter dominated. Like 4x copy and everything, but like what, 3 decks in the top 64 or something ridiculous, or the top 32, just craziness, crazy domination. So I can understand that one, happening. Emrakul, absolutely, because they screwed up. Reflector Mage. Well,
so there's a couple things about Reflector Mage, which is I think that it was a preemptive ban rather than what had happened already.
Sure.
So, it's going to get kind of stupid once you start having this Felidar, Felidar Guardian, Saheeli Rai, the new Splinter Twin combo with Felidar Guardian, Saheeli Rai.
We'll get to that in just a minute.
But I think that a big piece of that was going to be Reflector Mage. So having to deal with not only preventing the combo, but also having this super aggressive mid-range strategy backup plan with being able to create Reflector Mage loops and tokens and things like that was going to get super old super quick. And so I think that one was more of a preemptive thing. And the other, I don't know if people are aware of this, but I recall that they did not do any testing with Reflector Mage at 3 toughness. They just sort of tacked it on to the end. That's the rumor / pretty confirmed rumor that I've heard from folks who've interacted with R&D before. Giving that card 3 toughness is that's the oversight. Like if it was a 2/2,
really
okay, fine. It's a 2/2. It can, trade with your 1-drop 2/1 creatures. It can get shocked now that we got shock back.
It can get shocked.
All that kind of stuff. But that 3 toughness, man, boy, it stands in front of Sylvan Advocates, and it just holds off all of the white weenie deck, and that was a major problem with that card. So
that was absolutely a major problem. Now, seriously, how many times have we been down this road of they changed something at the last minute and oops, they broke it? I swear to God, it's happened like a million times. Every oops, we didn't mean to X or Y, oh, Skull Clamp does this instead, oops, the Jite does that instead, oh, Reflector Mage, let's make him 3 toughness because of some reason in limited, I'm sure, and oh, sorry guys, you kind of accidentally did everything and broke it. Now, Patrick Chapin, who is on the Top Level podcast, which is a fine podcast, he talked a little bit about it, and a Reddit user, God bless him, Mr. Corliss, did a little bit of transcribing, and I'm not going to read the whole thing. You can go on Reddit, and I'll leave a link in the comments and description and whatnot. But basically it's Spell Queller versus Reflector Mage, 2 incredibly overpowered blue-white cards, kind of fighting for who's going to control the format. Now, if you notice with Aether Revolt and or Kaladesh, and particularly the meshing of the 2, there's a bunch of infinite combos that randomly showed up, and we're going to talk about some of them here in a little bit. However, Spell Queller interacts with those combos. It interacts with Aetherworks Marvel, it interacts with really powerful, stupid stuff that people are trying to do in a way that Reflector Mage doesn't. And I'll boil it down to this one line, and Ruben, I want you to tell me what you think about it, but this one line to me sort of sums it up. Now, Reflector Mage, he says, Reflector Mage is only not busted when the format has already gone off the rails. Basically, if combo is everywhere and it's just one thing after another and crazy stuff is happening in infinite after infinite and you're just getting blown out on turn 4, it doesn't matter if you got a Reflector Mage. That's great. Oops. Who gives a crap? You hated out all the aggro decks, and now the combo decks won everything because this great tempo card still exists. Spell Queller, still annoying. still difficult to play against. Still overpowered. Spell Queller is seriously overpowered. I still can't get over that card to this
But at
day.
least it's overpowered in the way that makes Magic fun. It's interactive. It keeps the crazy combo decks like you were mentioning in check. Right. Reflector Mage says no, you can't do something, right? So it's a little bit weird, right? Because most people would rather have their creature die to a Doomblade than have it get countered by a counterspell. But in this way, it's slightly different. They would rather get spell quellered than have their creature get bounced by a Reflector Mage. So it's a little bit of a change to that dichotomy. I mean, Patrick Chapin's just the smartest human on the planet. Like, if you're just looking for pure brain power, you don't need to look further than Patrick Chapin. He's got the most amps and volts. Like, it's trying to get it all together into one package is a little bit difficult and helter skelter sometimes. But when he puts words onto paper, he's top of the list. And it's a very good point about Reflector Mage, which is if Reflector Mage is irrelevant, your metagame is all Aetherworks Marvel and all Twin or New Felidar, whatever.
Copycat.
Copycat is, oh my god.
They're calling it Copycat, yeah.
Yeah, it's all Copycat, it's all Twin. There's no mid-range left, right? So, no Ishkana deal, no Gideon even. You have this, combo versus combo versus combo metagame that we very rarely see, particularly in Standard anymore. And so on the one hand, you're making the quote-unquote best card in their deck. Like, people were splashing blue only for Reflector Mage in Humans decks because of how good it was in those mid-range battles. So when you're able to mitigate the damage that a Reflector Mage does, that's something that you want to be on the lookout for because so many people are playing Reflector Mages. But once everyone is doing it, it's a totally unreasonable look. Who can get to their combo first is not a fun metagame to be in. And so I think that it's a prudent change by Wizards. I think that the reason that Patrick gave is 100% correct, and I'm honestly glad it's not going to be a thing for the next however long it would have been, plus 6 more months now that rotation isn't happening on a regular schedule anymore.
Right, and before we get to the modern bannings, which Aaron, you can tell us all about, I would note that Copycat is, I think, a better name than Crazy Cat Lady, personally. And we'll get to that in a minute, but I want to talk about the bannings. And the other thing I want to note about Spell Queller versus Reflector Mage doesn't just bounce it. It actually provides that extra feel bad of looking at your awesome card that you can't play.
Well, I think it extends to it wouldn't be so bad if it was you can't cast that specific creature. It's anything that has that name. Like, if it was just okay, so you bounce creature A and you have another Ishkana in your hand. Okay, fine, you can do a different Ishkana. Not that there's any way that you could track that, but it's the fact that you can't do any of them, and it's
the worst is when you're Sylvan Advocate and then they go Reflector Mage, bounce your Advocate, and then your draw for the turn is another Sylvan Advocate. And you're well, crap.
Yeah, there's real pain. Fun. Yeah, it just creates a really weird, unfun situation. But Aaron, speaking of unfun, let's talk about modern banning, shall we?
I would rather not, but okay. Because if I talk about it, that means it's real, and if it's real, I'm not ready to deal with it yet. No. So it's acceptance.
You must accept that these things have already come to pass, Aaron, and that reality exists, and we must face the issues at hand.
Okay.
Ignoring them will not make them go away.
That's true, because as you've proven, because you're still here. So.
Wow.
Correct. I am living proof that ignoring your problems will not make them go away.
I love you, Ruben.
I accept the love, Aaron.
Wow. Love is...
So on the modern side of things, they announced that there are 2 bans. The first one is Gitaxian Probe, which some people had suspected was going to get the ban hammer. Phyrexian mana has been something that I think a lot of people agree is a problem, specifically in modern. We had decks like Infect, Death Shadow, the Kiln Fiend deck, Suicide Blue, as it sometimes is called, and it feeds off of these really free cards that you can use to fill your graveyard easily and then or do damage to yourself easily and make your Death Shadow bigger and feed your dull cards. And so people weren't surprised that Gitaxian Probe got the axe. They indicated in the explanation that it basically does too much for too little cost. It prevents your opponent from being able to bluff because you get perfect information. You get to draw a card, and it's just doing a lot for what you pay for it. And then they announced that they're banning Golgari Grave Troll. And I'm a little confused by this, to be quite honest, and I know that I'm biased here,
Really?
but
Really?
So the explanation they gave is they said that Dredge, the mechanic in the deck, has a negative impact on Modern by pushing the format too far towards the battle of sideboards. And Modern, to be fair, though, is a battle of sideboards. You know, Affinity forces you to have a sideboard plan. Tron forces you to have a sideboard plan. Burn forces you to have a sideboard plan. I'm not really sure I agree with this notion that Dredge somehow exacerbated that issue or that Dredge somehow pushed it too far. Anybody who plays Modern knows that you have to have a sideboard plan for certain decks. And in fact, that's something a lot of people don't like about Modern, is that you have to have these silver bullets. But that's kind of what it is, and that's something we accept when we agree to play Modern. So I'm not really sure I agree with the notion that Dredge is somehow responsible for turning Modern into more of a sideboard war. They go on to say that with the printing of Cathartic Reunion and Prized Amalgam, the deck became unhealthy for the format, but they don't really say why or how. And then they end it on a really kind of personal note. They say, while those cards were discussed, the real offender has always been the Dredge mechanic itself. And it really sounds like they're basically just saying we don't like it and other people don't like it, so it needs to go. It feels personal. I don't feel that there was enough dominance to really warrant this. If you go back to Eldrazi Winter, we were seeing like 30-40% metagame share of Eldrazi decks. Dredge has, this version of Dredge that people are playing now has only been around for like 6 months, and we haven't seen that big of a metagame share of that. You're not seeing different versions of the deck like we did with Eldrazi. You're not seeing multiple top 32s, multiple top 8s. The hate is doing what it's supposed to do. I think people started realizing that they needed hate. They started identifying what hate was best for their deck, whether it be Surgical, Grafdigger's Cage, Rest in Peace, and it's doing its job. And I just don't think the dominance is there. I don't think the wins are there. I just don't understand, frankly, and it feels more personal to me than it did with Gitaxian Probe, and that kind of bothered me. And it also bothered me that they didn't capitalize the second D in Dredge.
I saw that. That is a little
that was
off.
Petty right there. That was petty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
that's a little.
I've had multiple conversations with R&D at various times throughout, sort of the last X years of me being involved with Magic, and I can tell you pretty universally, no one likes it. It's a weird way to play Magic. It's hard to explain to people who don't play Magic. They don't understand what's happening. And it's cool because it's different, and it's weird because it's so different. I don't know. It's a weird thing to even promote. If R&D lets it live in the format to be as strong as it is, and I'm not saying it was actually a problem personally, but I'm saying for it to be as strong as it is, I don't think they want that to even represent what competitive Magic is right now, which is do more interaction on these fronts and don't do interaction so much on that front. Like, yes, there's hate cards for Affinity, for Urzatron, whatever, but you're interacting on the battlefield. You're interacting with permanence. You're not interacting with this weird, like, triggers over here in your graveyard. Everything's in your graveyard. Everything's about making things happen over here instead of happen over here. But I can just tell you, either way, no matter whether, I mean, I can understand it feeling personal, and I can also understand the ownership that R&D feels over the development that they do and the game. I mean, everybody loves Magic. It's how it works. That's why we're here. So I agree it feels a little bit personal, and I think, honestly, there might be a non-zero amount of personalness in there, but the other half is I think they're really trying to push, this is the way we want Magic to look and to be played and to be experienced, and it just sucks that you enjoy the way Dredge plays Magic because they don't want you to play that way.
Well, I do want to say on a positive note, though, I think that both of the bans are not going to keep the decks down. I remember when Eldrazi Winter was going on, and Aaron Forsythe gave that painfully awkward interview at GP Detroit, and he said that, if they do decide to act on Eldrazi Winter, they don't want to nuke it from orbit. They still wanted Eldrazi to be a thing. They just didn't want it to be what it was. They didn't want it to be as powerful. Infect can still totally survive this. There's been talk of them possibly having more counter spells like Spell Pierce. There's been talk of them having more Vines effects like Blossoming Defense. And likewise, I think Dredge can absolutely survive this. We can use 4 Golgari Thugs. I think that the bans, made the decks less scary, but I don't think they crippled them. And so ultimately, I think the bans did do what they needed to do. Like, I think if they were to have, if they would have gotten rid of Cathartic Reunion or Prized Amalgam, Dredge would be sunk. If you would have gotten rid of something like Blighted Agent, Infect, might have been sunk. And so they're still letting the decks be viable. So I still think we're going to be able to play these decks. I just don't think they're going to be as scary as we're used to.
Might just tune them down a little bit. But anyway, So let's keep going. So, all right, so last Friday, The entire set was spoiled because it's the Friday before pre-release, or the Friday before the weekend. You know what I mean? The week before the pre-release. Either way, took the internet 3 hours. 3 hours to find a pretty good turn 4 combo. Now, we're going to talk about another one, but the one that was like, oh my god. I remember I was sitting there, hanging out at work, and then somebody goes, hey, Evan, did you read Felidar Guardian? And I'm like, what? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like some weird uncommon, right? And he's like, yeah. He's like, you know what Saheeli Rai does, right? And I was like, what? Let me put it on screen for you guys. Felidar Guardian is a white 3 generic mana uncommon 1/4 cat beast. When it enters the battlefield, you may exile another target permanent you control, then return that permanent to the battlefield under its owner's control. Saheeli Rai makes copies of things. When she enters the battlefield, she has 3 loyalty. For +1, she can scry 1 and deal damage to each opponent. For -2, and this is the key, create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature, except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. That token gains haste, exiled at the beginning of the next end step. Sure, her ultimate does whatever. The point is, turn 3 Saheeli Rai, turn 4 Felidar Guardian, kill you with a million hasty cat beasts.
Yes.
Here's a fun one. Turn 6, I play Felidar Guardian, blink my land, Saheeli, kill you. And so this happened. The world lost their mind. Saheeli quadrupled in price in 2 hours. And I was getting reports from all over, like, GP Louisville, people were just running around just buying every Saheeli they could possibly get their hands on. It was ridiculous. And now Saheeli has, I think, stabled out anywhere from like $20 to $25, where it was a $6 card for basically ever. And like, oops, oh my god. So a lot of this banning stuff, when they said and they announced, hey, we're going to do a banning at 11 a.m. Eastern, or I'm sorry, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. First of all, it's really weird to like Wizards to say, hey, there's a ban on, and restricted announcement, which is why we knew something weird was going on. But the other half was people were like, oh my god, like this blew up on Friday. It's blew up all over the entire weekend. They're going to preemptively ban Felidar Guardian. Oh my god.
This is fine.
No, this is fine. Now, Wizards, and I can tell you why, because I've been here many times. There have been combos or threats of something taking over the metagame, and it does nothing. Actual zero. Now, sometimes you get Eldrazi Winter. Sometimes you get a Pro Tour that just got ran over. But Wizards would rather have that result and see that it's broken so then they can go back and fix it than preemptively start banning things because they're scared, because there's a shadow, because someone says they found a deck, because someone said they found a thing. I mean, we are past the days of Memory Jar where it's like oops, Zvi broke it. Did you guys hear about it? Like, no. We have millions of people all over the world. If something is that broke, we would clearly have heard about it beforehand. But I don't think, and this seems to be the popular consensus among, I think some people who do game development and some other pro players, that this was not seen. This was not expected. This was not built in. Like, Wizards did not know that this combo existed. And maybe they did. I don't know. Or maybe they found it after the set already went off to the printers or whatever, and they couldn't change it anymore. But either way, we have a turn 3 Saheeli, turn 4 infinite combo kill in standard. How do you guys feel about that?
It's an interesting oversight. I think that this actually something similar, I feel like, happened the first time Splinter Twin was in standard with Deceiver Exarch. I think that R&D confirmed that they just didn't see it. They just overlooked it.
Right.
And to be fair, this one is a lot easier to interact with than Deceiver Exarch Splinter Twin. Deceiver Exarch having flash and also tapping down a land was a big deal. Splinter Twin, the creature coming down first and then the copying effect means that there's less interaction that's possible in certain metagames. So there's a lot of ways to interact with the new Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian combo that couldn't be done with Deceiver Exarch. For example, Shock is in standard, and you can just shock the Saheeli before it gets blinked. Instant speed removal is a lot more effective against this version of the combo because both pieces are sorcery speed. You can even just attack Saheeli on turn 3. And then, of course, there's stuff like Grasp of Darkness or a Fatal Push that has Revolt. There's lots of stuff that you can do. But it's a little surprising. You're right that they let this one slip through, particularly because Saheeli Rai is already part of an infinite combo in Vintage, Sun Titan Oath is already a thing that uses Saheeli Rai to sort of loop Saheelis and make an infinite number of Sun Titans. So they already knew that this was a thing that was theoretically possible if you could continually blink a Saheeli an arbitrarily large number of times in a turn. So it's a little weird of an oversight, but if you're going to have combo in Standard, people would much rather play against 2-card combo like this than 1-card combo like Aetherworks Marvel. People just have a visceral reaction to not wanting to play against things like Tooth and Nail, Enduring Ideal, Aetherworks Marvel, whereas 2-card combo, things like Painter's Grindstone, people are okay with that because they perceive it to have more interaction. And so that's my thoughts on it.
Aaron?
I admit I don't have too many opinions on this, but I do want to touch on and this is something I want to pose to you two. There's been a lot of talk of Wizards making mistakes lately, and whether or not these bans are them copying to those mistakes, if in fact these were mistakes. And there's been a lot of talk of, well, how did Wizards not see that this was going to happen? How did you not see that Saheeli and this Felidar thing were going to do this? And, do you think that's a valid criticism? Because some people feel like we shouldn't even go there and that we should trust, Wizards and their infinite judgment. And then there are other people that are like, they're slipping. They've been, the evidence, the fact that we have 3 bans in Standard is evidence of this. The fact that they seem to have missed this combo is evidence of that. Like, do you think that's a valid criticism for them?
I think that Wizards, well, first of all, I think that they have one of the most difficult jobs, kind of, period. They're in that situation of being a game developer, having to make lots of people happy where none of them can actually be happy, which is great. And we know it because we're Magic players. Magic players can always find something. That's why we care, so on and so forth. However, there's a few thoughts on this, and I've actually been reading up on this before the show. There was a piece on Reddit where someone was like, "Look, like people basically say between like Ravnica and Return to Ravnica, all of those standard formats, awesome." I don't believe that. However, because I lived through them, not all of them were great, guys. Seriously, Shadowmoor Standard, what's going on? But regardless, like there were some great formats in there, and what they were saying, their argument was that there is less good removal, that there's no more Path to Exiles, like there's no more Doomblades, everything's a little bit more kind of, it's like Fatal Push, which we will talk about, incredibly powerful. However, it has boundaries. It's not just kill a creature, destroy a thing, or if you want to kill a creature, destroy a thing, it becomes a lot more difficult. It's a lot more expensive. There's multiple colors of mana for it, so on and so forth. One of the things that Owen Turtenwald brought up, and I was going to bring up this later, might as well bring it in because it sounds really good right here, which is Owen Turtenwald tweeted to Reed Duke and said, "I would prefer a more conservative approach to design where they don't print cards that are way too good and need to be banned." And let me be real, super clear, that's terrible. That is literally terrible for Magic. If you want Magic to die, then that's where you plant your flag and you say, I want Magic to be real careful and real conservative, and I don't want any of these creatures to be doing anything stupid like the old ones did. I want everything to be like in just these little boxes, and sure, it's going to come down to like who's got a giant growth or whatever, but at least it didn't break anything. It's like, you know how you don't get people excited? You know why I love Magic? You know why it's been like enthralling me for all these freaking years? Is because it's always exciting. They're always doing crazy stuff, and sometimes it doesn't work. Like, sometimes Temporal Mastery happens and people lose their minds, and it's not even that good. It ended up not even being that good. Yes, that was great because it had a moment at the Pro Tour. It was amazing in coverage. It did what they wanted it to do. They knew it was not busted in ways that we didn't know it was busted, but we were really excited about it. And those are the pushes that you need. Yeah, sure. Sometimes you get an Emrakul. Okay, they were being cute with a 13 mana and they shouldn't have. They should have had a 15 mana cost on it. That's adorable, but at least they did it, At least we're here, and we had big epic moments. We got to see Emrakul do what she did. She wasn't even a factor until the Pro Tour. Everyone was like, Emrakul's not even that good. Like, no, the Emrakul is busted, people, and they showed it to us. So if you want boring sets and bad cards and for your local game store to suffer because no one wants to play with that garbage, see also Mercadian Masks. Like, no one likes that. No one likes boring.
I was going to say Champions of Kamigawa is another good example of playing it too safe where everything costs too much. I mean, it's happened. It sort of ebbs and flows, right? Like Ice Age, everything costs too much. Mercadian Masks, everything costs too much. That's when you get things like Prophecy and Nemesis and, just not, and most people don't even acknowledge that Kamigawa block existed, right? So to say that all of the standard sets between Ravnica and Return to Ravnica were great, that's so there's a psychological theory called rosy retrospection, which is that you remember past events as better than they actually were, which I called fun dip theory on an episode of In Contention way back in the day, which is, when you were like 6 and how good fun dip was. Yeah, it's actually terrible. Like, if you had Fun Dip today, it would be the worst thing. Like, what is happening with this random candy stick? It's very similar to that when you look back on Shadowmoor Standard, right? So I think that that's a little bit of an overreaction. But some of the reaction is to Magic is just different than it used to be. We have Planeswalkers now. Creatures are the best spells, like, Reflector Mage. So it's just the way that people look back on Magic. And I would rather they make attempts like this than play it safe. I would much rather somebody not be afraid to fail rather than just keep their boat in the harbor all the time. You know what I mean? So,
Aaron?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I was also seeing a lot of talk about if they had just printed hate, we wouldn't have to have had these bannings, where it's like if you had just given us a Pithing Needle, if you had just given us a Cranial Archive, and that would have been easier than having to do all of this. And I agreed with that assertion as well. Sure. And I'm also changing my drag name to Rosy Retrospective, so thank you for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, like, I think it sucks that the three had to be together. It sucks that it wasn't just Emrakul. They couldn't just say, okay, Smuggler's Copter was too good. Sorry, it was a new card type. We went too far. Oops, derp. Mm-hmm. Like, okay. It's the combination, I think, of all three of them. The first Bannings in so many years, that happened. Okay. But at least they went there.
I don't know. I do also think there's some credence to the assertion that there's some confidence kind of lost in Standard, because when we agree to play formats like Modern and Legacy, which saw no bans, why are we still playing Miracles?
Because something has to be the best, Aaron.
But anyways, we understand when we play the older formats that there is that risk there. We don't like it when our decks get banned, and we feel a certain way when it happens, but ultimately that's something we agree to when we play those formats. And I feel like for a long time there was a sort of safety in playing Standard. When the Birthing Pod ban happened and the Splinter Twin ban happened, there'd be people that were like, well, I don't want to experience this. And we would sort of say, well, go play Standard then if you want to be in your box and be safe. And so people did that because they didn't want to worry that their deck may get banned. And for the first time in 5 or 6 years, now the bans have happened. And so I worry that there is an audience that played Standard because they hope to never experience that, or because they just thought it could never happen to them, and now it has. And I do kind of worry about kind of confidence in Standard players or the Standard market of who's going to want to invest in a format where they know it can happen to them now. Dun dun dun. And,
yeah, I mean, not everybody's made of money. If you invested in Smugglers, Copters, and Emrakuls and don't necessarily want to trade them in for the epic card game, like, you can't build blue-green emerge or whatever your budget deck was going to be because you put so much money in these cards that just got banned. So it's a big problem. One of the other things that really bothers me about this set is that occasionally I'll be like, all right, there's 16,000 Magic cards. I can excuse you if you forgot about one of them that would have been the perfect thing, but you literally put Pithing Needle in as a masterpiece and then just didn't put it in as a preemptive answer to both Aetherworks Marvel and Saheeli Rai. Like, what are you doing? Like, that just seems...
that one stung a little bit. There was some pain.
It feels like they just blacked out and woke up again.
It was hope. We saw the masterpiece and we're like, oh. We were like tapping our friends. We were like, yes, it's happening. And then all this, that it's happening gif. And all of a sudden we look at the set and we're like...
Now, I would note that the other half... the other half of this is my train of thought literally just left me. I'm sorry. The other half of this is that I don't know what I'm saying anymore.
Like Wizards are,
and then I blacked out, and I don't understand what's happening.
The other thing I want to say real quick is that everyone was like, "Oh, there's still no graveyard hate." Well, don't worry. The Egyptian-themed Amonkhet set is certainly going to have some amount of graveyard hate because mummies are a big problem. All right, I'm just telling you.
I hope they're a big problem. I am here for that.
So we'll have some crack the sarcophagus.
Well, look, so there was another. There is another infinite combo in Standard. Now, Granted, this one is nowhere near as exciting, but I'll bring it up on the screen.
There's like 5 pieces to pull off.
There's plenty, but here's a 2-card combo. Let's put it that way. Here's another 2-card infinite combo thanks to Aether Revolt.
Oh, sure.
Crackdown Construct is a 4 generic mana 2/2 uncommon artifact creature. Whenever you activate an ability of an artifact or creature that isn't a mana ability, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Well, Wandering Fumarole has a wonderful activation cost of Zilcho. I do not believe this combo is good in any way. However, it is something that you can also put in your Saheeli Rai Felidar Guardian deck. It doesn't really hurt anything, and it makes them work against 2 different infinite combos instead of just the one. Honestly, I think what happens is Crackdown Construct becomes the Abyss. Now, the Abyss made your opponent sacrifice a creature, or, well, every person.
It just makes you chump block every turn.
It makes you chump block every turn. It doesn't have trample, it doesn't have haste, it doesn't make copies of itself. It just becomes one big monster duder. And, you can answer that with all sorts of things, or just throw a 1/1 in front of it. So that to me is cool and neat, but I don't think it's really going anywhere.
Yeah, that one's just, devoted Druid Quillspike or whatever.
Right.
Unless you give it somehow are able to give it protection or trample or something like that. It's cool that it exists. I think it's great because I am the Wandering Fumarole. Yeah, exactly. and the deck building requirement for it is not that high. All you have to do, you were already probably playing Wandering Fumaroles in your blue, white, red combo deck. So why not just have a copy or 2 of this 4-mana artifact creature, Hill Giant thing?
Well, a Slip Through Space is a card in Standard, as someone has noted in the comments, which I appreciate.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you gotta play Slip Through Space in your deck, though, so that's not great, but...
Hey, the Infect decks were running. I think Modern Infect tried it for a brief time.
Yeah.
And then they stopped. Okay, so... Let's get to some spoilers, okay? It's time. We gotta dedicate some time for spoilers. Now, Aaron, your 2 I think are up first. I would rather you kind of talk about. Give us some Sram expertise and a fatal push.
Okay,
what are these cards do?
Okay, so Sram's expertise costs 2 and 2 white, and it lets you make 3 1/1 servo tokens, and then you get to put something with converted mana cost 3 or less into play. And this card worries me. The look on your face is everything right now. I'm particularly afraid of this card because in Modern, there's a deck that some people like to play called Sun and Moon. And I'm really concerned that this is going to be something they're going to do where it's like, here's 3 servos and a blood moon, or here's 3 servos and a ghostly prison, and it's just like nothing good is going to come from this card. And so I'm pretty sure Todd Stevens is looking at this and coming up with all sorts of miserable enchantments that cost 3 or less that he can put into play for free with this card. And I'm just like, no.
Yeah, that is certainly one way. I mean, I can't imagine that this card will not bring about a tokens deck in Standard. There are so many ways to pump those tokens. Like Metallic Mimic, for example, is in this set.
Always Watching costs 3 or less.
Always Watching, Master Trinketer, for example. I mean, always Watching isn't going to help the tokens, but you're on the right track.
Oh, you're right.
Then there's another
Ajani's Oath of Ajani. Like, I mean, come on, it's not going to take much.
It's not going to take a whole lot, and there's a ton of ways to do it. I think that of the expertises, Sram's is the one that has the most potential, which I think is for Standard, which I think is good because it's also, it's kind of the fairest. I mean, like the red one steals a vehicle or a creature that can just lead to a complete blowout situation. Obviously, we've talked about the black and the blue ones that are a Wrath and a Mystic Confluence of like 3 unsummons respectively. 3 1/1s by comparison. I mean, really, it's 3 dudes seriously, right? I mean,
3 bad dudes seriously.
How bad can it be?
This card is not very fair.
That card is busted.
Okay, so I remember what I was thinking earlier. The train came back around. The other half of what's going on in Standard is that it quietly made Gideon the best card in Standard again.
Oh, yeah.
Just for those who weren't paying attention, Gideon is now the best card in Standard. Yes, this may be powerful, that may be powerful. No, Gideon is all around. If you're playing a white deck, he's 4 of, no question. Maybe you play 4 Avacens, maybe you don't. But you play 4 Gideons, and there is no doubt. So if you're not doing Srams...
another way to pump your Srams expertise tokens. Yeah, sorry.
Absolutely.
Didn't mean to...
No, it's all good. I mean, basically, if you're not playing Srams expertise, you're playing Gideon. That's what your 4 is. That's what it feels like.
Or just play both. Por qué no los dos?
Porqué los dos? Yeah.
Porqué no los dos?
That's fantastic.
With the pace? All right.
So look, one of my favorite tweets in the past week. I'm moving on. Oh, actually, no. We need to move on to Fatal Push. I'm sorry, because I really have a fun thing about the Caught in the Brights thing.
But go ahead.
Fatal Push, however, Aaron, tell me how incredibly important this card is, because my God, it feels really important.
I have several friends who play Merfolk that are terrified of this card. Fatal Push costs 1 black. It's an instant. Destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less, but it has Revolt, which is an amazing mechanic, I think. Destroy that creature if it has converted mana cost 4 or less instead if a permanent you controlled left the battlefield this turn. This is definitely going to see play in Modern. There's talk of it seeing play in Legacy as well. You can kill Tarmogoyf with this if you trigger Revolt. You can kill, like I said, you can kill Merfolk for 1 black. That's really scary.
You can kill Tarmogoyfs with it without triggering.
Right.
Oh, absolutely. But it's just a good card. And there's no way that this doesn't see older play. Like, it's so good.
Right. Yeah, this card is just, again, for what it's doing and what it's done, I feel this is the best piece of removal I have seen printed for its cost, probably since Path. Like, actually just kill a thing. It's one and kill a thing, and they wanted to kill so much, and the beauty of it is that it's going to be good in standard. It's going to be amazing in older formats. Ridiculous, because those formats are ran by 2 converted to maybe 4 converted mana cost creatures. Like
nothing costs 5.
Like
Kiki,
that's that's all.
There's nothing that costs 5 in Legacy.
Legacy.
I cannot think of anything that costs 5 in Legacy.
Kills your friend Leovold.
It kills Leovold. Lets him draw a card, but you know what? That's fine.
Yeah.
Fatal Push is a huge deal for Modern for a number of reasons, but one that I wanted to point out real quick, other than being one of the most, if not the most important card that's ever been printed to fight against Infect, is that typically when you had a black-green mid-range deck, you had to splash a color for your 1-mana removal. You either splashed white for Path or you splashed red for Lightning Bolt. Mm-hmm. You don't need to get into a 3rd color anymore now that you have Fatal Push. Fatal Push also has the intervening if clause. So it doesn't come up very often, but for example, if there is a phantasmal image copying something gigantic like a Wormcoil Engine, destroy target creature if it has converted mana cost 2 or less, allows you to destroy the phantasmal image or whatever other illusion creatures that have the sacrifice keyword or key phrase on it, or do something like have a Dak Faden emblem and then target your opponent's 6-drop with Fatal Push and gain control of it, right? So it lets you do those are little corner case scenario things, but it does just make the card even better. Fatal Push is, I don't think it's arguable that it's more important to Modern than Path to Exile is right now, because Black is the card that needed this the most.
I think it's also important to note that unlike Abrupt Decay, this can kill a man-land. So if you're facing something like Inkmoth Nexus, whereas Abrupt Decay couldn't destroy it, you can destroy it with Fatal Push.
Wow. Yes.
Get your play set. Look, Path to Exile, foils. I think nowadays, what is it, up to $8 or $10? Like, Path to Exile, basically for a good 4 to 5 years was literally $5. Just never changed. Just always $5, and it only slowly crept up and got more expensive. If you like playing with black mana, for God's sake, get a playset. It's uncommon. This is probably going to be the cheapest you're going to find it. Trade for all yours as soon as possible. Don't you ever let go of a foil. Oh my God.
Yeah.
This card is
this will let you play Sultai in Modern, which people have been trying for a while, but there was never a 1-mana removal spell. You needed to have Path or Bolt, and now you do. So you get to play your blue cards if you want to in Modern.
Are we calling this the Black Path?
I think it's better than Path.
Because of the color.
Your opponent doesn't get anything out of it, which is a good thing.
Yes.
There have been many people that have argued. I remember back when people were debating whether or not you should play Abzan or Jund in Modern, there were a lot of people that were saying, well, we get Path to Exile. And I remember there were several pros, Bay included, that were like, turn one, Path to Exile is not, there is a drawback there. Your opponent is getting land. And that is something that a lot of people are willing to overlook or willing to, think is not so bad. But when you really are going to these long games, you tend to regret something like that. And so this has literally, your opponent gets nothing.
It's more like Black Lightning Bolt than it is Black. It's Black Lightning Bolt that can kill a Tarmogoyf.
You could argue Dismember was largely that, but this is Dismember without a lot of that drawback. This is Dismember without a lot of that.
This replaces Dismember everywhere. Yeah, this card's unbelievable.
This card is fantastic. Next up, and so I was telling a story a little while ago. One of my favorite tweets of the past week was, and this was before the bannings, was retweet if you want to run over Emrakul with your car. and it had nothing but Caught in the Brights in it. Caught in the Brights is a white and 2 generic mana common aura enchantment. You enchant a creature, the enchanted creature can't attack or block, but when a vehicle you control attacks, you exile the enchanted creature. The poor gremlin is in headlights.
This is a really sad story on a Magic card. Although running over Emrakul with a vehicle is quite adorable. Yeah,
It's
I mean,
so
other
good.
than the flavor and the art, I mean, everything's a 10 out of 10 except for this won't see any play anywhere.
Well, of course not. I mean, it's a great limited card, and that's what it's supposed to be. It's just,
Oh, yeah.
it's one of those things that Magic kind of gives you that a lot of other games don't give you that experience because, and I've found out a lot more of this over the past year because I've just been butt deep, #butt deep, in board gaming, and I've been really falling in love with a lot of card games and board games I had no idea existed, and it's just funny to me when these types of things show up, people get to point them out, and we all get a big kick out of it. However, Aaron, tell us a little bit about Hope of Ghirapur.
Oh my goodness. So for those of you who play Legacy, this is basically the colorless Xanthid Swarm. Xanthid Swarm is something that typically sees play in the sideboards of Legacy Storm as a way to protect your combo if you feel that you're about to go off. And so Hope of Ghirapur costs 1 colorless. It is a legendary artifact creature Thopter. So legendary Thopter, has there ever been a legendary Thopter before?
I don't think so.
No. Okay, so this is pretty dope. So it's that. So 1/1 flying, and you can sacrifice Hope of Ghirapur until your next turn. Target player who was dealt combat damage by Hope of Ghirapur this turn can't cast non-creature spells. So whereas Xanthid Swarm was limited to decks that only played green, and Storm would splash the tropical island just to be able to play Xanthid Swarm, any deck can use this. There's been talk of Black-Red Reanimator wanting to run this. Any deck where you're trying to protect your combo or you're just trying to give yourself some immunity, this can do it for you. Like, this card is good.
It's
Yeah.
amazing that. Thank you so much for the chat, because they basically explained one of the other amazing parts of this card is,
Oh my god,
it's a Thopter commander.
that is delightful.
That's so good. That's so
Yeah,
good.
that's pretty good.
That's fantastic. I can't get enough of that. But I do think, and I've actually seen some other people and some vintage players really excited about this card because this card locks them out until your next turn. Xanthid was like, okay, until end of turn you can do a thing, and people were like, oh my god, this is crazy, and it wasn't like a 0/1, you didn't even deal damage. I know it's dumb,
Right.
sometimes that matters, but like the fact that like until their next turn all they can play is creature spells, like that's huge in a format where no one really plays creatures. Like maybe
Yeah.
against the Shops deck you screwed it up, but like everybody else, they're just like looking at their ridiculous spells and playing nothing and passing, and that's a huge deal. So Ruben, how do you feel about this legendary commanding Thopter?
It's very similar, actually, to Fatal Push in terms of being able to homogenize your mana.
Yeah.
Previously, like I just mentioned, you would need to splash a third color for your removal spell. You don't have to splash green for Xanthid Swarm in your Legacy or Vintage decks anymore. So that's one thing. The other flip side of it is, this shuts down a lot of the combos that we were talking about in Standard. This slides right into an aggressive red base or white base deck to be able to prevent your opponent from playing a turn 4 Aetherworks Marvel or a turn 3 Saheeli Rai. It's just another roadblock, and it also deals damage. It's 1 damage per attack, but you know what? That stacks up eventually if you're playing with a lot of burn spells and things like that. So I love this card. I think it's great. It is a huge deal that, not only can they not counterspell anything during your second main phase, but then they can't divination or whatever they would do on turn 3 and on their turn. That is quite powerful. So pretty
I
good
think it's
card.
also important to note that Modern, to my knowledge, Modern has never seen a Xanthid Swarm type effect. Like, I know we've had like Silence, but I mean, like, for the combo decks in Modern, let's say you're playing Scapeshift, let's say you're playing Ad Nauseam, we've never had access to this before. Like, that's really dope.
That's
Yeah,
super
this
sweet.
card in the sideboard of Ad Nauseam is super scary.
That is a
It
very
is.
scary
My
reality.
play set's on the way.
Wow. Well, there you go. So next up, I want to talk a little bit about Rishkar's expertise. So all the expertises are pretty good, very powerful. I actually think the blue one might be the best one because blue's always the stupid best one for whatever reason it is. Rishkar's expertise, however, this card made me tweet, I don't even know what's happening anymore. That's what this made me tweet. I don't even understand what's going on in my life at this moment. 2 green, 4 generic mana for a rare sorcery. You draw cards equal to the greatest power among creatures you control. Note that it doesn't target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 5 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. You remember the last time there was a 6 mana green spell that did just something really crazy stupid?
Was it Seasons Past?
Spoiled it.
It was not Seasons Past. Well, it depends on what your definition of stupid is.
It depends on if you want Sphinx's Revelation or if you want to, like, cascade. If you want to, like, be super aggressive.
Right. This is no Primeval Titan, but let me tell you, as far as 6 mana green things, you can play Ishkana for free, y'all. Let's just make sure we're real clear on that.
You can draw a billion cards and then play Ishkana.
Yeah, you can draw into Ishkana and play Ishkana. That's just one of the bajillion interactions that you could have. Let's not even talk about planeswalkers and crazy artifacts or vehicles or whatever it is you want to do.
Or the other expertises. Like, all I want to do is chain green expertise into blue expertise, into black expertise, into red expertise. Oof. Like, that's all I want to do with my life and my choices. Just one time, I'm going to put them all in a deck together, and we'll see what happens. I think it's it's a pretty cool card. Green always gets these super unwieldy draw cards equal to the highest power, etc.
But they've done that, and when they've done that, they've targeted. And I know this because they've made some cards in the past. Even when I think one of my preview cards was the 5 mana, target a creature, draw cards equal to its power. And I was like, oh, this card's super sweet, blah, blah, blah. Well, you target, which means they get a chance to kill it, and then you do nothing. This one, if you have 3 or 4 creatures out, you're going to be drawing some amount of cards. They're more than likely not going to be able to kill everything in response. And that wording means that it happens as long as you have anything. So the ability to draw into something and playing a 5 converted mana cost spell for free when all the other expertises could actually slot in underneath it, like, ooh, this card is just like, it is playing with fire in ways I have not seen fire played with in a while. Now, they didn't really know what they were doing with vehicles, and we're going to get to that in just a second, because I still don't think they really figured it out, and we're going to get to that. But my God, 6 mana play something 5 for free is just, I can't. I don't
pretty
get
impressive.
It. So, unless I'm the only guy freaking out about it, let's move on. Siege, look, now let me back up. Now, people who are watching the video can see it, but let me back up for a second. There was a point in time in which Ensoul Artifact was printed. It is a blue and a generic mana. It is an aura that goes on an artifact that makes it a base power and toughness 5/5. Everyone was like, that's cute, that's neat, might happen in something in sealed once upon a time.
And it was very bad for a very long time.
And then it hit standard. And it made a thing, and it was actually impactful, and people were winning games with it, and it's actually been seen play in Frontier. I noticed that just earlier today, which I thought was amazing. So I want to bring up this combo. First of all, Wizards made a 1 mana 7/11.
Always open.
7/11, always. It's a 1 mana uncommon 7/11 vehicle with crew of 6. But who cares about the crew? Why? Because Siege Modification is a 2 red, 1 generic mana uncommon aura that enchants a creature or a vehicle. As long as the enchanted permanent is a vehicle, it's a creature, it gets +3/+0 and has first strike. That is a 10/11 first striker on turn 3. Now look, I know it's just a thing and an enchantment, and all of these things can be interrupted, and all these things can get in people's way, and blah, 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 blah. No. When Ensoul Artifact did what it did, like actually rocked standard for a very long time, for months, don't tell me that a 1 mana 7/11 is not playing with freaking fire also, when you have this awesome enchantment that makes it first strike, for God's sakes. Like, you can't even kill it with Death Touch. Like, you actually have to do something about that enchantment first. I actually think that this might be viable. Am I crazy?
Maybe.
Is it just me?
I mean, they literally printed Fatal Push. But other than that, it's like...
yeah, okay, so something dies to Doomblade. I get it. All right.
Yeah, exactly. That's the dies to Doomblade argument. I absolutely am. I'm all about this one. It's a little different because you could put the Ensoul Artifact onto a Darksteel Citadel, which was indestructible. But certainly there were games of Standard where you were just like, turn 1 Ornithopter, turn 2 Ensoul Artifact, attack you for 5, turn 3 put another Ensoul Artifact on my Darksteel Citadel, attack you for 10, and you're just like, yep, I didn't draw the 4 removal spells that deal with that, so I'm dead on turn 4. to just some stuff, and Consulate Dreadnought combo with a siege modification is very similar to that. Like, sure, Fatal Push exists, but you only got 4 in your deck, so draw one.
I mean, it's not like that's going to be the only thing you're doing. It's not even like that siege modification is that bad. But sort of by itself, like, it lets you enchant a creature or an artifact. Like, at worst, oh my god, my guy gets +3/+0 on first strike. Not the end of the world, but clearly, this is a pretty scary combo. Aaron, just me?
The only thing I have to say about this card is every time I look at it, I suddenly have Beyonce's 7-Eleven stuck in my head. Just
Wow.
Yeah.
I was just a little upset that both of these weren't common, so that this could get played in Pauper without having to deal with Fatal Push. But obviously, that's way too good for Pauper.
Yes.
I just still think it would have been cool. But yeah, this is a cool one. I'm happy it exists. I don't think that it's as this would have been a hugely explosive combo and would have gotten a lot more play had we not already covered 2 different infinite combos.
Well,
right?
Clearly.
So
clearly. All right. So next up is Tezzeret's Touch. Let's just keep on this Ensoul Artifact action, because this is basically an Ensoul Artifact that gets itself back. For a black, a blue, and a generic mana, it is an uncommon aura that enchants an artifact. Enchanted artifact is a creature with base power and toughness of 5/5. When an enchanted artifact is put into a graveyard, return that card to its owner's hand. So it's an Ensoul Artifact that gets the artifact back. You don't get it like the touch back, but you get the artifact back.
Yeah.
It's 1 more mana. Yes, it is multicolor, but I felt that, again, for me, personally, I just did not see Ensoul Artifact ever doing anything. In my time in Magic, little dinky, what look like dinky enchantments don't really go anywhere and don't really do anything. And
usually,
oops, this random, like, Big Scissors shows up and starts wrecking everything. So I think it's worth mentioning these types of effects.
Sure. I mean, most of the time, like, when you start looking at standard new cards that have been printed, you say this is the new this, or this is a color shifted version of this, and you try to compare it to things that exist, and we get into trouble when we say this is the new Dark Confidant, this is the new Lightning Bolt, etc. Tezzeret's Touch, yes, it on the surface looks very similar to Ensoul Artifact, because it turns an artifact into a 5/5. Obviously, the extra black mana being added to it to give you the I don't know what the mechanic was called, but there are always these enchantments that whenever a creature dies, you return the creature to your hand. Things like Squeeze Embrace, if I recall correctly, do things like Tezzeret's Touch. This one, again, it's 3 mana. You're not going to be completely hosed on turn 2 like you were with Ensoul Artifact. So you have a whole extra turn to get this thing going. It's good. I mean, I don't know how good it's going to be, but certainly if you put this on a vehicle that doesn't have any creatures hanging around, that already has abilities, things like Trample or Lifelink, then you're in a lot better shape than you were before. I'm not sure that Tezzeret's Touch is anything but a limited card personally, but I'm glad it exists.
Well, I thought Ensoul Artifact was just a limited card personally, so.
True. And we'll get shown if somebody can break it. Like, that's the beauty of all these cards, is you can look at something, there's a bunch of cards out here that are like that. How great really is, like, Rogue Refiner, right? Sure. Or Weldfast Engineers, actually a better example for the multicolor, because it's a 3/3 for 3 at the beginning of at the beginning of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gets +2/+0 till end of turn. Right? It's a 3/3 for 3. It's quite good. But we've seen stuff like this before. We've seen things that try to pump other things, and they haven't exploded into popularity. Nothing like Ensoul Artifact was good before Ensoul Artifact happened. So we're going to be surprised by something, I'm sure.
All right. So in order, because we've got very little time, I want to talk about some other topics this week. I want to pass over Solemn Recruit, which, by the way, is just basically Silver Paladin 3.0 or whatever at this point, because we also had like Fabled Hero and Markov Blade Master. We've had a bunch of like random double strike thingies that look good, sound great. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent left, it gets a +1/+1 counter. That is, for what it's worth, I think remarkable. But it might just not do anything in this format that is full of crazy overpowered things. However, Exquisite Archangel, I did want to bring up 2 white, 5 generic mana for a mythic 5/5 flyer. If you would lose the game, instead exile Exquisite Archangel, and your life total becomes equal to your starting life total. Like the angel that reset your life total to 20, this is not, because this can either be reanimated, or this can just kind of live out in the battlefield in some fashion or manner and give you a life insurance policy, literally, like few have ever existed in Magic. Aaron, tell me what you think about this angel. I'm just curious. I got to hear it. You know, you ready to bring this thing back? You ready to reanimate it? Is it too silly? Is it just cool?
I mean, the only thing that makes me kind of sad about this is it doesn't do anything against Infect. Like, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, maybe this will buy me some time. Like, if I'm playing Ad Nauseam, maybe this will let me live an extra turn against Infect. But no, it really only is against, like, loss of life or damage. And so I kind of tuned out at that point.
It's kind of cool with Final Fortune effects. Like,
yeah.
Like, that's what I started thinking about with Exquisite Archangel, is if you can start stringing together Final Fortunes with reanimating, or you can't reanimate it, but with multiple Exquisite Archangels, that would be kind of cool.
That would be sweet. I just thought it was a really interesting effect. I thought it was really unique. I think it's a great mythic. I think Wizards did a great job turning Platinum Angel on its head. Platinum Angel was one of the masterpieces. Fantastic. But I got to talk about amazing. This. And the art, I mean, you know, Brad Wrigley just destroyed it. But I got to talk about this next card because I actually think, and I've heard this from other people, but I actually think Aethersphere Harvester, a 3 generic mana, rare 3/5 vehicle that has flying. When it enters the battlefield, you get 2 energy counters. You pay an energy counter, and it gets lifelink until end of turn, and has crew of 1. Crew of 1. I do think that this is the replacement for Smuggler's Copter. It is the next dumbest thing. A mana up, same crew cost, has evasion. Have no friggin' idea how you beat this thing in limited, like literally ever. Just good luck. Because that's how I interacted with Smuggler's Copter the first time. I attended my Kaladesh pre-release. My opponent played turn 2 Smuggler's Copter. I got completely destroyed. Game 2, turn 2 Smuggler's Copter. I got completely destroyed. Like, turn 3 Aethersphere Harvester. How in the world do you kill this stupid thing?
It does feel like this was the answer to Smuggler's Copter, and now there's no Smuggler's Copter to answer, so this will just be an invasive species. Right? This is just the frogs they brought in to eat the beetles, and there's no more beetles, so now there's just a billion frogs in Australia. Basically. This card is bonkers bananas. Like, 3/5.
I just don't think people have really recognized how ridiculous.
5 toughness is so many toughness. It's ludicrous how big this card is. And, you know, there's lots of easy ways to get energy, even in any deck, let alone one dedicated to getting energy. So I think Aethersphere Harvester is quite good. And I think you're right. I think it's probably going to be the most played vehicle in the upcoming standard.
Yeah, this card is bananas. How do you feel about it, Aaron?
These vehicles are just so absurd. Like, it's just one after the other. It's just I really just hope I never see another vehicle again.
It does feel like they put a lot of stuff on all these vehicles.
Yeah, they're just so busy and just ugh.
They're so full of things. This to me feels like Wizards was trying. This is an example of trying too hard. When you made a new card type and you're like, oh my god, let me show you what I can do. Let me show you what I can do. And you're like, guys, it doesn't need to do all that. You're like, yeah, but check it out. I got this thing, and I can pull this thing, and I can pull this lever, and it does, oh my god, it's got a million things, and it makes the energy, and use energy, and it can fly, and lifelink. And I'm like, dude, it's a 3/5 flyer for 3 mana with crew of 1. It didn't need anything beyond that. Yeah,
it's the Avacyn problem of you could erase one of the things that it has, and it would still be a super playable card.
And here we are. So I'm going to close out our spoiler segment, and Aaron, I want you to walk us through Kari Zev,
I love her.
She's insane.
Okay, so Kari Zev, Skyship Raider, costs 1 and a red. She's a legendary creature, human pirate. Yes, I'm already on board. Legendary pirate. This is dope. First strike and menace, 2/1. Whenever she attacks, you create a legendary 2/1 red monkey creature named Ragavan. It's not even just a legendary monkey. The monkey has a name.
Yeah, it does.
That's tapped and attacking, and then you exile the token at the end of combat. This monkey got more excitement than Ulrich of the Kraken Horde did. What does that say about your legendary werewolf when your legendary monkey token gets more hype than that? Like, girl. Like,
dude. I mean, and the story behind her is also amazing. Like, she's like 16 years old or something in the story. Or 15, and leaves home. For what it's worth, by the way, her power and toughness is a 1/3. I think you accidentally mentioned it was the 2/1.
Oh, sorry about that.
And that's okay. But again, she's a 1/3 that makes a 2/1, so all of a sudden it's a 3/4 worth of like power and toughness for your 2 mana. She has menace. She's harder to block. She makes a legendary monkey. She makes the monkey. He's legendary, and Look,
and is wearing goggles.
For God's sake, it's a monkey wearing goggles.
And shout out to Ari Levitch. Ari Levitch wrote her story today on the Mothership, and it's so good. You get to see her teaming up with DePaula. You get to see DePaula in the storyline, and Kari and Jace have these interactions. And
she calls her monkey my prince.
Yes.
Wow.
It's just like they're so close. And there's like a really comedic scene at one point, light spoiler here, where Kari Zev is fighting with a guard in the air, like the propeller woman. And while Kari and the propeller woman are fighting, the monkey's picking the propeller woman's pocket. Like, well, I'll just kill some time. And like the whole story is just fantastic. So if you get a chance, please read it, because Kari is lovable and the monkey's great. And it's just amazing.
Look, this to me is this was the best cherry that they could have put on top of this spoiler season. It came out, it was like one of the last spoilers came from Elaine Chase. Elaine, you rule, and I'm glad you picked this one as your Twitter spoiler. It was beautiful. It was absolutely, look, as much as I didn't enjoy drinking from the fire hose, this being the end of that fire hose was actually perfect.
Like, you thought you've seen it all? Here's a legendary monkey.
Wearing goggles. Now, there's a couple things that are wrong here. First, I'm a little sad that it's not a cat monkey, because they'd already printed Wily Bandar in this set.
Sure.
So, like, where did they just get a regular monkey? Like, if cat monkeys exist, right? Like, if you're watching Avatar: The Last Airbender, you know that scene where the king has just a bear? It's not like a owl bear or a platypus bear. It's just a bear. Everybody's super confused. That's how I felt about this. It's just a monkey. I don't know where just the monkey came from. Also, you gave the best aggressive red creature in the set. You gave it to Aaron to talk about first. You son of a... I can't...
We have been nonstop spoilering, and she hasn't said as much. That was why that happened.
I know. I'm just messing with you.
Fair enough. So
but yeah, Kari Zev is great, and I love that outfit.
It's everything about that was just beautiful.
Yeah, everything about the card is great.
That was one of those things. Like, as pissed as I was about how spoiler season just kind of came and went too quickly. By God, they just ended it the best way possible.
The other thing that was upsetting is that they reference her ship in the flavor text, and then just don't print a legendary vehicle of her ship.
Next time.
Yeah.
What,
but they do give an awesome explanation for how the ship got its name in the storyline. The theory being is that her crew are the teeth, and that we're going to show them that our teeth are sharp, and it's really great.
Nice. That's delicious. That's amazing, because the Dragon Smile is the name of her ship.
Yep.
So we're going to move on to Gather the Townsfolk while we have just a few minutes left here. A few things I wanted to talk about. Now, earlier this week, Tolarian Community College, the professor, Brian, came out and said, basically, I don't have a job anymore. And now Tolarian Community College and its Patreon is a lot more important, and could he have $1, please? And it was one of those things that was so, like, just, first of all, the professor is amazingly heartfelt and genuine, and I think that's how, that to me is how you want to come across anyways. You always want to sort of speak from your heart, and I think he does a great job at that. I'm glad that I'm in a position in my life that I can now go and sponsor him, which I totally have, and I'm proud to do so, and I want to encourage every single person to go back to Tolarian Community College. He has to pay for all his bills through this. He has to make his life work through this. There's no more, this is the secondary income. He's talked about getting an office now because the income is so high, which I think is great. And I hope that just kind of keeps on rolling, and that you can turn him losing his job as a professor to become a full-time professor for all of us. So I think that's amazing. So if you haven't gone to patreon.com/Tolarian Community College, get on that. So, all right. So another thing I want to talk about really quickly was Mr. Andrew Shrout. Andrew Shrout is a guy who I've worked with, who I've hired and had to do stuff at SCG Live, and I thought he had a really great tweet. And his tweet was talking about how Magic Online players feel like second-class citizens. And when you see stuff like what we're seeing here just recently that I'll talk about, I can't blame him for kind of calling Wizards out on Magic Online. People just don't matter as much because they don't get the treatment that you would expect an online version of your paper card game would get. In particular, today, Wednesday, January 11th, they have officially banned Emrakul, Smuggler's Copter, and Reflector Mage and Standard. They've banned Gitaxian Probe and Golgari Grave Troll in Modern. And those things are gone now. And for the 9 days, Yes, it's kind of silly. I get it. But for these 9 days that you can play in all other places that are legal to play Magic with those cards, you can't play on Magic Online.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really strange. And do you guys feel like Wizards sometimes put Magic Online in that space?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Come on. Of course.
I mean,
of course Magic Online is...
Because, I mean, Ruben, tell us a little bit about Palace Jailer, would you?
Okay. So, boy, first of all, I am desperately and madly in love with Palace Jailer for a number of reasons. One of which is, at the beginning, your end step. So if you recall,
so delicious.
One of last week's nominees was the Monarch token. Not really getting the love it deserved, but the Monarch token made the top 8 of the Legacy GP in the Grand Prix Louisville this weekend, which, by the way, occurred. You may have missed it. That's cool. But Palace Jailer is a 2/2 for 2 color, 2 generic. Sorry, 2/2 for 2 generic and 2 white mana for a human soldier, uncommon from Conspiracy Take the Crown. When it enters the battlefield, you become the Monarch. And also, when it enters the battlefield, you exile target creature an opponent controls until an opponent becomes the Monarch. So not only is it a card draw engine, but it's also an answer to sneak attack decks or sometimes a reanimator deck, which is pretty spectacular. It's the only 4-drop in this Death and Taxes deck that Craig Wesco played. And I'm just super impressed by this card even appearing in the deck. It takes a lot for anything to make it into Legacy, let alone something that costs 4 mana.
Well, that's
and so
this is its second appearance in a GP top 8.
Exactly right. This is its second appearance in as many chances.
Yeah.
2 for 2 in Legacy top 8s. And oh, by the way, not on Magic Online. Cannot play this deck on Magic Online because Palace Jailer and Conspiracy Take the Crown. Not online.
Well, I did some looking into, so Sanctum Prelate, it seems like some of the cards are being offered possibly in treasure chests, because I went on Card Hoarder and looked up Sanctum Prelate, and you can buy those. Like, I faced that online. Like, I think they're offering them through, I believe it's the treasure chest, but still, they're choosing some cards and not others instead of just releasing the whole damn thing.
Well, I mean, note that this is the Monarch mechanic, at the beginning, your end step is not something that is going to lightly be added to Magic Online. I mean, they've got to include the typo and everything. But no, I mean, this is an actual special thing that has to exist. They have to program it and code it and blah blah blah, and it's just for this one card and so on. So I mean, I can already hear the arguments that the dev team is like, it's not worth the effort to make this one card work. Well,
no, it's a mechanic. None of the Monarch cards are online. Like, I don't care if they put them in the treasure chests or whatever, like Sanctum Prelate. The Monarch token isn't online. So, what are we doing?
Right. Like, they just completely ignored one of the main things that would, I think, make Magic Online pretty sweet. And I can imagine there's some random technical reason or there's some great programming reason that somebody could tell me as to why this is dumb. But look, the issue is, it doesn't matter. The perception is that Magic Online people just don't matter when they don't get the things that Paper Magic gets. And I'm glad that, someone had mentioned to me on Twitter, like, hey, Leovold was not on Magic Online. And I was like, Wizards, you need to fix this, ridiculous. And then someone was like, Leovold's on Magic Online. And I was like, sorry, that was me. But then they came out with Palace Jailer, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to hold off on Palace Jailer until the show. But again, I think Wizards could do a lot of work at making people feel a lot better about being Magic Online players, about spending money on Magic Online, if they get the same toys that everybody else gets.
Yeah.
So, it just feels like, I say this like maybe once every 2 months or something, but it just feels like MTGO is consciously saying, what can we not, what's the line where people stop playing Magic Online? I know we give them a lot of crap, but sometimes stuff like this happens, and it's just so bizarre.
It's tough. Aaron, so there's a special hashtag that we use here on the show.
It was a nominee. It was Mike C's nominated hashtag.
That's right. It was a nominee, from the Academy. Gave it that nod. Aaron, can you tell us a little bit about that special hashtag and what happened this past weekend to cause me to bring it up?
So there's a hashtag that we like to use on the show whenever anything happens to one Reed Duke, because I think we can all agree we're all fans of Reed Duke. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't love Reed, but
he's dreamy. He's so dreamy.
You guys. nice. So he was at GP Louisville, and he just won. He won the whole damn thing.
Wow.
And he won with a very interesting build. I believe he had been testing the deck in some videos for Channel Fireball, and I think he was calling it Dark Bant or Dark Leovold or something like that. But there's a lot of things that are very interesting about this deck. For example, he runs only one Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who does that? Reed Duke does that. 4 copies of Noble Hierarch, which is, yeah. 4 copies of True Name Nemesis, 2 copies of Leovold. Ruben, that's your card.
It certainly is.
That's right.
2 Ponder, 2 Thoughtseize, 1 Murderous Cut.
Mm-hmm.
What? And then when you look at the sideboard, Painful Truths. Love Painful Truths. This deck is amazing, and for the most part, he appears to have done a lot of work on it. He's been really working hard at it, and he won the whole thing. BBD also made top 8 at this event, playing Miracles. Michael Majors with Sultai Delver. Black Red Reanimator made top 8. This was just a stacked top 8, which made the fact that there wasn't any coverage a lot more heartbreaking. But Reed ended up winning. He looked great in his acceptance photo. Those biceps, yes, and it was just grats to him because he's fantastic.
Wow. So I can say something you will never unlearn is that Bay is Danish for poop. So you get to say hashtag poop watch, and that's weird.
No.
Hashtag poop
That's
watch.
not okay. Now we
No.
know it's hashtag Bay watch because Bay. They hear us saying poop watch. That's weird.
I think I gotta look up Urban Dictionary, but I'm pretty sure Bay is a what's the word for it when letters stand for things?
An acronym?
No, that is
Acronym. I'm
no,
pretty sure it's an acronym.
Initialism. Because, and let me tell you the difference, because I'm a nerdy prick like that. Acronyms. Acronyms are words that are formed out of different words. So like DARE, for example, or MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Initialism is like FBI or IBM. You can't say the word. It's not IBM or FIBI.
Right.
Like, no one says that. That's anagram versus initialism. I am a
Urban
huge
Dictionary.
nerd. I'm sorry for everyone for having to listen to that.
Urban Dictionary is telling me.
Evan, you gave us the prick, and then you gave us some prick sauce too.
Just drizzle. That's
drizzle.
what you do.
Urban Dictionary is telling me that it stands for before anyone else, and also, I got some in the Twitch chat on that as well, which I did not know because I'm not a cool person.
It's true. All right, so we have to turn the corner, ladies and gentlemen, to the finisher. So this year's TwitchCon was announced this week and will be held in Long Beach, California on October 20th to 22nd, 2017. And while many big events will be occurring, one will certainly surpass them all. The Magic Mike's is named Twitch Channel of the Year.
Yep.
Or maybe not. In any case, what are you most looking forward to from TwitchCon 2017, Ruben?
Well, I am hugely excited that all ticket sales and pre-registration for TwitchCon 2017 will be available in dollars, Bitcoin, or Smugglers, Copters, and Emrakuls.
Wow. Wow. Aaron?
We didn't cover the Epic card game thing, but
We didn't.
We
But
did.
it was well. We touched on it in a way that was silly. But anyway, Aaron, go ahead.
We were subtle about it, is what we were.
Yeah.
So Twitch's goal this year is to continue celebrating all things Twitch, including the newer, broader scope of content on our platform. And by broader, what I mean is replacing Ruben and Evan with Emma and Jadine on Magic Mike's.
Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
broader. I get it.
We don't need to be here. What are we doing here? We're just window dressing. Come on now.
I'm just eye candy.
Right. Well, let me tell you, Twitch has said that with our IRL category for vlogging and our upcoming mobile streaming app, even people who can't attend will be able to connect with their favorite broadcasters and friends who can. So, with the comedy and magic covered weekly here, be on the lookout for my new web series, The Tragic Show. Wow.
It's not bad.
You've been waiting on that
The
one.
Tragic Show.
That one's been gestating. You didn't even know how long that was in your head. That's been in there.
Tapping the cards because life is pointless and meaningless.
Because we're a speck of dust in a light beam, and nothing you do will ever matter.
Right.
That got dark.
See you next week.
Why would we untap? There's no reason. There's no reason for the untap step. All becomes meaningless, and we all become banned in the end.
That's right. Now
That's too real. Too
Well,
soon.
Too real for you for the Tragic Show?
Too real.
together
The
we pull it back.
All right.
Ruben, thank you very much for joining us this
Thank
week.
you.
Aaron, thanks a lot for hanging out.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're going to go to our final slide. And I want to tell you, that ends another episode of Magic Mics. Thank you for joining us here to discuss all things Magic. I want to thank my co-hosts, you guys, for watching, and hope you join us and support us at patreon.com/magicmics. Visit our website at magicmicspodcast.com that exists thanks to our Patreon supporters. Or follow, like, tweet, favorite, share, subscribe to everything social that tells people that we exist. Catch us online at twitch.tv/magicmics, on Twitter at magicmicscast, on Reddit at reddit.com/r/magicmics, and on Facebook.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/magicmics. Talk to us privately at magicmicspodcast@gmail.com. Follow the audio-only podcast at magicmicspodcast.libsyn.com, or find us on iTunes, or join us here next week. Same time, same place, for another episode of Magic Mics. Good night, everybody.